Welcome back, everyone. House approval of a scaled-back farm bill setting up a major fight over food stamps. So what do food stamps have to do with the farm bill? Tell us about that. Our Washington Bureau Chief Jacqueline Policastro in Washington. Jacqueline, tell us about the farm bill fight and food stamps.
Well, Lee, the farm bill is actually really complicated, so let's break it down. The Senate passed their version of the farm bill, and it cuts $3.9 billion in food stamps over the next 10 years. Then the House was trying to work on their bill. The first one they tried out, they wanted to cut $20.5 billion over 10 years. That didn't work. It didn't pass. So what everyone's talking about now is this new House bill, and what it does is fund only farm policy for the next 5 years and completely takes the food stamps out of the bill. That did not get any support from Democrats, but it did pass.
What about our representatives in Washington? When we talk about the House approving the scaled back version, how did our representatives vote?
Well, I'll start with the senators first, and I'll tell you that Senator Brown voted for the Senate version, but Senator Portman voted against it. Now, when it comes to the House, our area of Ohio is actually really interesting because Marcy Kaptur, of course, voted no to the first version and no to the second version. But when it comes to Latta, he voted yes both times. Jim Jordan is the trick. The first time around, he voted no because he thinks that that $20.5 billion isn't enough. And there were a lot of other Republicans that also felt that way. But the second time around, once Republicans took the food stamps out of the farm bill, Jim Jordan voted yes. And that's sort of the interesting thing to look at.
And what about fallout at the White House from this new House bill? Where's the fallout with the president?
There's a lot of fallout. The president says he will veto any farm bill that does not include food stamps. And then the Senate Ag Chairwoman, Debbie Stabenow, she's a senator from Michigan, and she basically came out right after the House passed this second version, and she called it an insult to rural America. This is very important because, you know, Debbie Stabenow is the woman who's sort of creating all of this farm bill policy. Just because she is sort of mad at House Republicans doesn't mean that she's not going to negotiate with them. Her office made that very clear, but it looks like right now she's not going to accept anything that doesn't have food stamps inside.
All right, so what happens to food stamps? The future of the program?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Food stamps are certainly not going to disappear. I can tell you that the policy around food stamps right now is going to expire on September 30th. The House says that they're going to vote again on another bill that will address food stamps aside from farm policy. But there's still such a disparity in the numbers. I mean, you're talking about the Senate wanting $3.9 billion and the House trying to get $20.5 billion, but can't even pass that because they don't think that's enough. So that's a big difference in numbers. There's going to be a lot of negotiating that has to happen.
Tell us how this breaks down for the American public. We know millions of people depend on food stamps to put food on the table. Break down some of those numbers for us if you could.
Yeah, Lee, there are going to be a lot of people who are really worried about that, and rightfully so. The Washington Post has these numbers. 47 million people in the United States now rely on food stamps. That's about 15% of the general public, and the average amount they're getting per month is $133. So if food stamps stopped, that would be a whole lot of money not getting pumped into our economy. Now, I just told you that 15% of Americans are on food stamps. What's interesting here, though, is that about 70% of Americans say they want cuts to food stamps. So you can see that this debate, the one that Republicans are having anyway, really does mimic what's happening on Main Street. So it's one of those issues that you can see sort of correlated between what the general public is saying and what Republicans anyway are telling us they want. Yep. Then there are some other numbers that are very importantly, you know, this race and political division. The numbers that the Washington Post have say that 22% of food stamp recipients are African Americans, but African Americans only make up about 13% of the general population. And then there's the politics behind it. So in a poll, Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to report using food stamps. So again, you can see those numbers really related in what's happening here in Washington. The Black Caucus was very upset about this when the House took food stamps out, and you know, you'll continue to see that outrage.
All right, and part of the problem may be the name of this bill. It's called a farm bill. So what do food stamps have to do with a farm bill? Why not
you know
call
what,
it
Lee? I'll
stamp
admit
bill?
food stamps. Right, exactly. Food stamps really don't have a lot to do with the Farm Bill. Back in the 1960s, lawmakers tried to mix food stamps with the Farm Bill, and it was a way for them to try to get Democratic support for the Farm Bill. The idea was that adding food stamps along would be able to pass the Farm Bill. And as you can see now, it looks like that's definitely changing.
All right, Jacqueline Policastro, thanks so much. We appreciate your input from Washington, getting up close with our representatives there, Capter and Latta, Portman, Sherrod Brown, Stabenow. We appreciate you very much, Jacqueline, for joining us this morning on Conklin and Company. Take care. And when we come back, we'll bring it back home to the city of Toledo. The Toledo mayor's race officially heating up now. Take 3 with London Mitchell and Skylar Meadows straight ahead.